In this video, I'll discuss how the LSAT relates to being in law school and being a lawyer. Now first, to give you a little bit of background, I am a full-time LSAT tutor with a perfect 180 score on an officially administered exam, and I've helped hundreds of students reach their goal scores. But before my LSAT teaching career, I went to law school and practiced law for about 4 years, both as a prosecutor in California and at law firms in New York. So I think that I'm uniquely qualified to talk about the connections between the skills tested by the LSAT and those involved in lawyering. So let's get into 3 ways that the LSAT relates to being a law student and being a lawyer. One of the most common stereotypes about lawyers is that they are incredibly nitpicky with words. And that's because understanding and using language precisely is one of the defining characteristics of lawyering. Take one recent example from a Supreme Court case called Niz Chavez versus Garland. In this case, it centered on the meaning of a particular phrase in a federal immigration statute, a notice to appear. Now, both parties in the case agreed that a notice to appear required written notice of certain information, including the charges against the recipient of the notice, the time and place of the court hearing, and the consequences to the person of failing to appear in court. But the issue in the case was whether sending 2 separate documents that together contained all of this information could constitute a notice to appear. The Supreme Court said, no, the phrase a notice to appear required all of the information to be provided in a single document because the article A in this context refers to a single countable item, one singular notice. So how does this relate to the LSAT? Well, across all 3 section types, logical reasoning, logic games, and reading comprehension, the LSAT cares very deeply about the precise meanings of words. In fact, understanding language precisely is probably the most important skill being tested on the LSAT. You can get questions wrong for overlooking or misinterpreting even a single word or phrase, even if you understood everything else in the problem. If versus only if, cause versus intended to cause, the law versus a law. This kind of fussiness over the exact meanings of words is important on the LSAT because it's directly relevant to understanding and interpreting statutes in real life. And that's why so much of your LSAT score depends on how precisely you understand the English language. On law school exams and in legal practice, you will constantly have to analogize and distinguish cases. And what that means is you'll have to analyze and make arguments about the important similarities and differences between your case and other cases. That requires understanding the legal reasoning used by judges in other cases, as well as the facts that were relevant to that legal reasoning, and then making arguments about why the facts in your case are or are not similar to the facts in the other cases, and why the same legal reasoning in those other cases should or should not be used in your case. Now, the skills involved in this process of analogizing and distinguishing cases are tested throughout the LSAT, especially on the logical reasoning and reading comp section. They're most obviously tested on questions that ask you to identify arguments that have the most similar reasoning structure to the argument in the stimulus, as well as on reading comp questions that ask you to identify the situation that is most analogous to a situation described in a passage. But these skills are also being tested on a lot of other different question types, such as those that ask you to identify the underlying principle of an argument, or those that ask you to identify which answer most closely conforms to a principle. These are the skills involved in identifying the legal reasoning that a judge uses, as well as the important facts that are critical to that reasoning. The LSAT asks you these questions because this is directly relevant to something that you do all the time in legal analysis. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I can see how logical reasoning and reading comprehension are relevant to law school and lawyering, but what about the logic game section? Surely that's irrelevant, right? Actually, wrong. Although it's not as directly relevant as the other sections, and although you won't be called upon to keep track of the order in which clowns get out of a car or the colors of a bouquet, you will be called upon as a law student and a lawyer to understand and apply complex systems of rules to complicated facts, and that's what the logic game section is all about. You can take any legal subject, any subject at all, and you will find that there is a part of that subject that involves understanding and applying a set of rules that can get quite complicated. For example, take contracts, which is a typical first-year law school course. In contracts, there is a doctrine called the statute of frauds, which requires that a party who seeks to enforce a contract against someone else in a court of law must have a writing that evidences that contract, a writing that shows the existence of that contract, and it has to be signed by the opposing party, by the party against whom enforcement is sought. But the thing is, this writing requirement only applies to certain kinds of contracts. And even if it does apply, there are certain exceptions that allow you to enforce a contract even if you don't have a signed writing. But on top of all this, there's a different system that applies if both of the parties to the contract are merchants within the meaning of the Uniform Commercial Code, and if the contract involves the sale of goods. If these conditions are both met, then the writing that is evidence of the contract doesn't need to be signed by the party against whom enforcement is sought. It can instead be signed by the party who is seeking enforcement, as long as that writing was sent to the other party and the other party didn't object within a certain time frame. So the point of talking about all these rules is not to teach you about the statute of frauds, but it's just to show you one among countless examples of a system of rules that you will be required to apply and understand when studying a legal subject and when being a lawyer. This is the kind of skill involved in logic games. So those are some of the ways that the LSAT relates to what law students and lawyers do. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the skills tested by the LSAT are the most important to being a lawyer. I'm not saying that if you're struggling with the LSAT, you're also going to struggle being a lawyer. That's not true. But what I am saying is that there are certain aspects of the test that are highly relevant to what legal practice is actually like, to what being a law student is actually like. And if you're currently struggling with this test, I would find those similarities to be actually quite motivating, because as you improve your skills at the LSAT, you are simultaneously improving the skills that will give you better grades in law school, the skills that will allow you to provide better legal analysis, that will allow you to help your clients more effectively, and will allow you to further the causes that you care about once you become a lawyer.